Om Shri Sai Ram, offering our collective pranams at the lotus feet of our beloved master, Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba, respected speaker for today's Samarpan session, revered elders, dear brothers and sisters, a loving Sai Ram to one and all. Some relationships are formed in a moment, but are nurtured over a lifetime through love, faith, and divine grace. Our speaker this evening is someone whose life beautifully reflects such a sacred journey. It's my great privilege and joy to introduce our esteemed speaker for today's 182nd edition of Samarpan, Sri Rajan Sood sir. Sri Rajan sir first had the blessed opportunity of Bhagawan's darshan in 1972 while he was a young architecture student in Delhi. What began as a brief encounter gradually blossomed into a deeply personal relationship with Swami that spanned nearly 4 decades. A journey filled with his boundless love, gentle guidance, and countless life-transforming experiences. Professionally, Sri Rajan sir is an accomplished architect. Yet, by Bhagwan's will, his life's most significant assignment was not merely architectural, it was spiritual. Swami personally entrusted him with the responsibility of conceptualizing and designing the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Medical Sciences at Whitefield, what we today lovingly call as Temple of Healing. Every drawing, every elevation, and every architectural detail was lovingly guided by Bhagawan himself, making the hospital not just a marvel of engineering, but a living expression of divine inspiration and excellence. More importantly, Sri Rajan sir was blessed to witness Swami's love in the smallest moments of everyday life. His experiences are not simply extraordinary incidents, but timeless lessons in faith, obedience, humility, surrender, and unconditional love. This evening, Sir will be sharing with us journey of a lifetime with Swami. Through his experiences, we too have the opportunity to reflect on how a single glimpse of the divine can blossom into a lifelong companionship with God. Dear brothers and sisters, let us open our hearts to receive the wisdom, inspiration, and the love of our beloved Bhagawan that Sri Rajan sir is about to share with us. With folded hands, it's my honor and privilege to invite Sri Rajan sir to address the gathering. Sai Ram.
At thy lotus feet, Lord, I offer my most humble pranams. Beloved Swami, respected elders, faculty, sisters and brothers, and dear students. It's deeply moving to be here this evening in Brindavan. Thank you for inviting me. My relationship with Swami has been simple, rather ordinary. No flags rent the skies, no seas parted, no earth split open. It was just an ancient journey of love, interrupted briefly for some technical hitch and resumed exactly from where it had paused. throughout, it was just him and me. In later years, Swami himself confirmed this continuity. I offer with humility, whatever unfolded in my life was entirely his giving. I was present merely to receive, obeying without a second thought and with a heart full of yearning. Today, I would like to share with you some moments from this journey, not because they are extraordinary, but because it was through them that I came to understand something of his love. It was the beginning of the year 1970 when my mother first heard of Swami, and she started attending neighborhood bhajans. I would accompany her occasionally, drawn not by devotion, but by the enchanting music and the impeccable organization. My father, meanwhile, was very fond of meeting saints, sages, godmen who happened to visit Delhi. He would gather us all and take us. Thus, when Swami came to Delhi in 1972, he insisted that we all go. We had a darshan from a distance and returned home, and life continued much as before. Later that year, my mother went to Prashanti Nilayam for seva during the Sera, but unfortunately had to return midway because my father was hospitalized in Delhi. Around that time, Swami sent a telegram through a devotee known to us. It said, "Swamiji is always with him. Be peaceful." Within a few days of that, we lost my father. Early the following year, that's 1973, when Swami came to Delhi again, I enrolled as a Sevadal volunteer. One day, during his Delhi visit, I was assigned crowd management duty at the far end of the central aisle of the main pandal. During his discourse, Swami made a remark saying, "Young people these days carry a lot of anger which burns their blood, resulting in gray hair." After the discourse, he stepped down for darshan. The crowd surged forward and I lost my balance. Somehow, I steadied myself, and the moment I looked up, he was standing right there, smiling at me. On the final day of his visit, the entire Sevadal was asked to sit in the lawns of his residence while he personally distributed the prasad. As he approached my row, I became rather preoccupied with a very important matter, trying to count how many gray hair he had. So absorbed was I in my investigation that he distributed prasad to everybody around me and moved away. As he reached the end of the row, he turned back, came to where I was sitting, and placed a generous handful of vibhuti packets in my hands and went away. Soon afterwards, a few of us went to the back of the house for water. And as soon as I bent down over the tap, I saw Swami's feet approaching. And I heard him say something like, "Hi." I was a little taken aback. And I was about to reply, but something held me back. And as soon as he moved into the house, all the boys around me started asking, "Why did you not reply to Swami?" So I said, "What was he saying?" They said he was asking if everything is all right. Only then did I realize that he had actually said, "Theek hai." That was the way he pronounced the word hai. And what he was referring to was my endeavors at counting his gray hair. That was my first interaction with Swami. Brief, simple, and unforgettable. From that day onward, something kept drawing me towards him. There must have been a gentle pull from his side too. Whatever the reason, it eventually brought me to Brindavan for the summer course in Indian culture and spirituality in the year 1974. The Brindavan we entered was very different from the one you know today. There were only a handful of structures, and our classes were held in a large shed behind Swami's old residence, at the back of the residence. Life was simple, intimate, and revolved entirely around Swami. There was hardly any distinction between the classroom and life. We never knew from where or when he would suddenly appear, whether in the classroom, in the pathway, in the dining hall, or just about any time during the day. Every encounter had the potential of becoming a lesson. And every moment carried the quiet anticipation of seeing him. It was in that atmosphere that we spent so many unforgettable weeks of the summer course. A day into the course, some boys from Delhi joined a little late. They were unable to enter because they did not have their badges with them. They asked whether I could help. Seeing Swami standing nearby, I quietly walked up behind him and asked him softly, "Sir?" There was no response. So I tried again, a little louder, "Sir?" This time he quickly turned around and he said, "Haan, kya baat hai?" I hope you all understand Hindi, okay? A lot of conversation that will work in that language. And I explained him the situation of the boys, and Swami immediately arranged for them to be admitted. I thought that the matter had ended there. That afternoon, he entered the dining hall while we were seated for lunch. From a distance, I noticed that he was rolling some papers and fashioning them into a makeshift stick. As he came near, my head bent down and my eyes searched for his feet. Using the paper stick, he gently lifted my head and asked, "How are you, sir?" For so many days thereafter, wherever he saw me, this was his standard greeting. "How are you, sir?" The emphasis was always on the word "sir." His language was never confined to words. No. Is it working? Yeah, okay. His language was never confined to words. A smile, a glance, a playful remark. Each carried much more than it appeared to. A few days later, he came while the classes were going on and suddenly asked, wife ka telegram aaya? The question came completely out of the blue. No, I replied. Swami continued, तुमको नहीं, हमको आया. पूछता है कि हस्बैंड स्वामी जी के पास ठीक से पहुंचा कि नहीं, खाने में बहुत मिर्ची तो नहीं. I watched him walk away, wondering what on earth was he talking about. Later that day, I collected my mail. Among the letters was one from a lady classmate from college. I opened it and began reading. It said, "Hi Rajan, how are you? I hope you reached Bangalore safely and are comfortable with the spice levels in the food." I stopped reading. Suddenly, Swami's words made perfect sense. Needless to say, I could hardly wait for the next darshan. As he came close, I held out the letter. Swami glanced at it and asked, "Wife ka letter hai?" I shook my head. "Shadi banaya?" Again I shook my head. Then came a question I never ever expected. "You want Swamiji?" "Yes," I replied. Swami placed his hand gently on my head and said, "Milta hai." Then he moved on. For a few moments, I simply sat there. What had I done to deserve such grace? Nothing at all. It was freely given, completely undeserved, and till now, and never will be forgotten. One of the things that struck me very early was Swami's extraordinary ability to transform even our mistakes into occasions for joy. During the summer course, elocution competitions were held, and I volunteered to participate. When the day arrived, I felt very confident. The speaker before me completed his talk and stepped down from the dais. Just then, Swami entered and sat right in front. I walked up to the microphone, offered my salutations to Swami and the gathering, and began. Or rather, I tried to begin. The moment I turned to the allotted topic, nothing came to mind. Not a single coherent thought appeared. I stood there for a few minutes, searching desperately for something to say. Nothing came. Finally, I mumbled an apology and begged a hasty retreat from the stage. As I came down, I saw Swami looking at me. He was laughing. He was laughing so hard that he had to hold his stomach. I immediately went and fell at his feet. Still laughing, he patted my back again and again. Any embarrassment I might have carried from that stage immediately vanished. After all, if my speech had achieved nothing else, it had at least succeeded in making him laugh. A few days later, I was asked to read a summary of the morning lectures. One of the speakers had spoken on the Ramayana. As I was reading the synopsis, my tongue slipped, and I solemnly announced, "Ravana killed Rama." A deep silence prevailed upon the gathering. Slowly, I turned to Swami, and there he was, laughing again, but this time with his tongue held between his teeth, like this. The sight was enough. The burden of the mistake vanished immediately. After the reading, he blessed me profusely. Only he could do such a thing. Time and again, he took my mistakes and returned them as gifts. Those weeks were filled with countless expressions of his love. Some were deeply profound. Others revealed his delightful sense of humor. On one occasion, a quiet murmur began circulating between the students that there were a few grains of rice mixed within the rice being served. A little later, Swami remarked, "Instead of worrying about the few grains of sand, think of all the rice that is nourishing you." With a single sentence, he transformed a trivial complaint into a lesson in perspective. On another occasion, he walked into the dining hall just after a student had spilled water on the floor. Looking at the puddle, he paused for a moment and then said, "Idhar number 1 kaun kiya hai?" The entire dining hall erupted in laughter. Even the embarrassed student couldn't help but laugh. Swami has a remarkable way of turning ordinary moments into lasting lessons, while dissolving tensions and leaving everyone lighter than before. Soon, the day arrived for the final examination. I was seated in the front row. The question paper had been distributed, and I had just put my pen to the answer sheet. Then something happened that shakes me even when I remember today. I felt 2 tender feet standing on my feet. Swami standing on my feet. I looked up, he smiled, and walked away. As for the examination, I remember very little of thereafter. Somehow the paper got written, whether by me or by his will, I cannot say. Perhaps one of the greatest gifts that Swami gave me was freedom from self-importance. When I succeeded, he reminded me not to take it too seriously. When I failed, he made sure I did not take that too seriously either. Finally, the valedictory day arrived. Swami had sent white dhotis for all the boys to wear. I had never worn one white dhoti or any dhoti in my life. So he sent his college boys to help us drape them properly. As I got ready, a fleeting thought crossed my mind. I hoped that Swami would look at me. Later, we assembled and began walking in procession towards the venue of the valedictory function. As I passed before him, Swami looked from head to toe, smiled, and blessed me. Before the summer course was over, he had begun calling me my boy. At the end of the summer course, Swami took many of us to Prashanti Nilayam. The first morning, a friend and I arrived late for darshan, and in a haste, we entered through the ladies' side. We were certain we were in trouble. From a distance, Swami noticed us and gestured for us to move towards the veranda. Sheepishly, we obeyed. It was only when he called a few of us into a room did we realize that we were about to get our first interview. After speaking to everybody in the room for a little while, he took me to a small side room with a spiral staircase. Since I was a little tall, He climbed up a few steps so that we were both eye to eye and laughingly remarked that his height was 5 feet 3 inches, including his hair. We spoke for a few minutes and returned to the main room. I came out walking on air. The next evening, while speaking to a few of us, he kept returning to a single point. The only desire worth having is desire for God. The following morning, however, a message arrived that left all of us bewildered. Ask all the boys from Delhi to return immediately. No explanation was given. Reluctantly and with heavy hearts, we departed. Months passed. The pain of separation remained. And eventually, I could no longer resist the urge to return. One day, I found myself seated in the quadrangle in front of the mandir. The moment Swami saw me, he came and asked, "Where were you?" "You asked me to go away," I replied. His next question shook me to my core. मैं बोला, "और तुम चला गया?" I had no answer. For years afterwards, I reflected on those words. Was love teaching me how to love back? Should I have resisted? Should my faith have been stronger to remain? What is stronger, yearning or obedience? Even today, I feel both of them balance the scale. Yearning is what the heart does, and obedience is what the mind must do. There was another lesson that Swami taught us repeatedly, especially as young students. His love was never indulgent. He expected us to live in a manner worthy of that love. One day, a few of us were seated at his feet. Swami suddenly asked one of the boys, "Hey, तुम्हारा girlfriend का क्या नाम?" The boy immediately denied having a girlfriend. The same question was then directed at me. I simply laughed. The following day, the same questions were asked again, and our answers were unchanged. On the third day, Swami turned once more to the first boy and asked, "तुम्हारा girlfriend का क्या नाम?" This time, the boy again said, "I don't have a girlfriend, Swami." With a very sharp response, Swami asked, "वो कौन girl जिसके साथ तुम रेड टी-शर्ट पहन के डिनर के लिए जाता है?" The boy instantly broke down. I'm sorry, Swami. I will never do it again." Then it was my turn. "हाँ, तुम्हारा girlfriend का क्या नाम?" I smiled but said nothing. Swami then asked the boy, one of the boys, the name of a leading lady from one of the scriptures. The moment I heard the name, I burst out laughing. It happened to be the name of the girl who had once written me a letter. In truth, there were 3 of us that spent a great deal of time together in college. That girl, another friend, and I. As far as I was concerned, she was just a friend. She could as easily have been another boy. As it happened, the third person from the trio was seated next to me in front of Swami. Seeing me laugh, Swami suddenly became serious. तुमको शेम नहीं, हमको शेम। लोग क्या सोचता है स्वामी जी का बॉयज कैसे गर्ल्स के साथ घूमने को जाता है। Then turning towards my friend, he asked, तुम इसके साथ क्या करने को जाता है? तुम इसका मुंशी है क्या? The entire room started laughing. Then turning back towards me, he said, कट करो, कट नहीं करना है तो उसे पुट्टपर्ती लेके आओ, मैं तुम्हारा शादी करता हूं। I understood then that it was not that our intentions mattered. Swami expected his students to conduct themselves in a manner that left no room for misunderstanding. His love is immense, but then so are his standards. A few months later, my yearning to remain physically with Swami became very strong. In 1976, a friend and I left home with the firm intention of living our lives with Swami. We traveled from place to place, trying to catch up with him, from Puttaparthi to Brindavan to Uti and back to Puttaparthi. Yet, for more than 6 weeks, he did not even look in our direction. Then one afternoon, my friend and I went and sat on the scorching sands outside the mandir. It was the height of summer. The heat was intense. As Swami crossed the upper veranda, he noticed us sitting there. He gestured with his hand for us to move into the shade. We remained where we were. On his way back, he signaled again. Still, we refused to move. Finally, during the evening darshan, he came to me and said, "Wapas jao, mother kitna rota hai कि son घर छोड़कर आ गया." Now, we faced a practical problem. Our money was exhausted. We barely had enough for a few meals. How, then, were we to return home? The next evening, I asked Swami whether we could ask an acquaintance for some help. His response was immediate. "Kahe ko? Wo tumhara kya lagta hai?" A little later, he emerged from the interview room and beckoned me forward. I rushed to him. Placing an envelope in my hands, he said, "Isme paisa hai. Adha tumhare liye, adha tumhare friend ke liye. Isse ticket kharido aur ghar jao." That day, without ever asking, he answered a question hidden deep within my heart. If not you, Swami, then who? There is a beautiful sequel to this. Next time Swami called me for an interview, I brought the few coins that remained after all our travel expenses had been met. Holding them in my cupped hands, I offered them back to him. Swami gently placed his hand over mine and said, "Keep them." Swami Ji is not a munshi. Those coins remain preserved to this day in a box in a cupboard and in the vault of my heart. For a long time, I pondered those two incidents. Many people pray, many people seek, many people ask God for things. But Swami was teaching me something much deeper. To love him enough to long for him. To trust him enough to obey him. Swami's training did not stop there. After returning to Delhi, I took up my first job. It was a highly respected organization though the salary was rather modest. That did not concern me in the least. Money meant very little to me. The days passed quickly, physically at work and mentally with him. Eventually, my mother and I returned to Puttaparthi. To my bewilderment, Swami would not even look at me. Day after day, I searched my mind for some mistake I may have committed. Nothing came to mind. 2 months passed in that manner. Then one day, all the Delhi ladies, including my mother, were called in to the interview room. Relieved, I too got up and sat in the veranda, convinced that at last Swami had agreed to speak with me. As he completed his rounds, he entered the veranda. He saw me sitting there. Immediately, he flew into a rage. "तुम इधर क्या करता है?" Barely able to speak, I mumbled, "Mother, mother, क्या करता है? Get out of here!" He thundered. I was devastated. With my head bowed down, I walked back to my room. For the next hour and a half, I searched for answers, but couldn't understand a thing. Then my mother returned. She told me that as soon as everyone had settled down in the interview room, he had asked, "Rajan ka mother kaun?" My mother immediately broke down. "Swami, please forgive him if he has done something wrong." At once, Swami softened and said, "He has done nothing wrong." And after a pause, he added, "अगर मैं इन लड़कों को कभी कभी गुस्सा ना करूं, तो ये मुझे पापड़ की तरह खा जाएंगे." After that, he spent a long time speaking of how good I was. Wow. As my mother was leaving, he told her, "I will speak to him tomorrow." The pent-up tears then began to gush. The next morning, Swami called me. He spoke affectionately for some time and then suddenly asked, "मैं तुमको इतना क्यों पढ़ाया? इतना कम सैलरी लेने के लिए?" I was completely taken aback. I had never given much thought to money. His love was all that had mattered. But Swami continued, "वापस जाओ और increment मांगो." I returned to Delhi and asked my employer for an increment. Since I was only a trainee, the request was declined. So I moved on in obedience to his words. The new job turned out to be a rather good one. Salary-wise, it must have been okay because Swami did not make a comment on it. This time, however, he told me the exact amount of increment I would receive. When I returned to the office, I checked the notice board and found that the amount recorded against my name was substantially less. I was perplexed. That very evening, I wrote to Swami for his directions. Next morning, as I arrived, my colleagues asked me, "Rajan, did you check the notice board again?" I went there, and to my astonishment, someone had stuck out the original figure and written exactly the amount Swami had mentioned. It was yet another reminder that long before the process had run its course, by his grace, the outcome had already been prepared. That was only the beginning. Over the years, Swami would guide me through one professional decision after another. Incidentally, while traveling from Brindavan to Ooty in 1976 to see Swami, I lost my bag, and it contained several aftershaves and colognes that I was very fond of. Inwardly, I complained to Swami and made a private resolve that I would never, ever again use an aftershave till he gave me one. 2 years later, while on room duty in Delhi, I finished shaving one morning and noticed another boy carrying a brand new bottle of aftershave. I knew that boy had not brought that with him. "Where did you get that?" I asked. At first, he refused to answer. But after much persuasion, he gave in and said, "Swami ne diya hai." Then he added, "Swami said, usko mat batana," meaning thereby not to mention to me that Swami had given that aftershave. For a few moments, I could not speak. The tears did the job of the aftershave. Needless to say, after this incident, I began using the lotion again. Looking back, I realize what moved me was not that Swami knew. It was that he cared. On another occasion, when Swami visited Delhi, I was assigned his room duty. I reported for duty that morning and stood outside Swami's door. A short while later, Swami entered. He looked at me and went straight to his room. From there, he called the state president. A few moments later, the president emerged from the room and informed me that my duty had been changed and that I should go back home immediately. I was deeply hurt. The only explanation I could think of was that Swami did not want me there. On the way back, I tore my scarf, I tore my badge and threw them all away. And I resolved to myself that I would never in my life return to Swami again. For days, I remained at home, nursing my wounded pride. Eventually, the heart won. My mother and I traveled to Brindavan. One morning, Swami called us into his house. That was the old house at that time. Pointing towards me, he told my mother, "Isme kitna gussa hai?" Of course, my mother readily agreed. Swami continued, "Amma tumse hi nahi, mujhse bhi kitna gussa karta hai. देखो कार के अंदर बैज निकाल कर फेंक दिया और बोला कि मैं स्वामी जी के पास अब कभी नहीं जाऊंगा." Then he turned to me. With an almost pleading look in his eyes, he held my hand in both of his and said, "Raju, मैं तुम्हारा ड्यूटी चेंज नहीं किया." I cannot adequately describe what happened within me at that moment. By then, I had long forgotten the hurt, but he had not. It mattered to him that no misunderstanding remained between us. That day, my mother and I had brought rasgullas and pans made for him by us. I was so lost in his words that I offered him the pan, not realizing that pan is the end and not the beginning. Swami placed it in his mouth and clearly enjoyed it. Only afterwards did it dawn on me that I had offered in the wrong order. Suddenly, I saw Swami's hand go past my face towards a container of the rasgullas. He pretended to pick one up and place it in his mouth. Then his face lit up with exactly the same expression of delight. No words were exchanged. None were needed. A few moments earlier, he had spoken to heal a forgotten hurt. Now, he had heard an unspoken thought. I sat there wondering, what kind of love is this? A love that noticed everything. A love that left nothing unattended. A love that would not allow even the slightest of shadow to remain between us. That's love. That same love would reveal something much deeper to me later. One day, while sitting at his feet, Swami suddenly asked, "Who are you?" I had no answer. He looked seriously and said, "You are a Manav." I nodded my head. Then he continued, "What does Manav mean?" Once again, I had no answer. So he replied, "Manav is a sandhi of two Sanskrit words, ma and nava. Ma means new, ma means not, nava means new. So, Manav means not new." I nodded my head again. His next question, what in our relationship is not new? I had no answer. He took my hand again into his and he says, "Our very relationship is not new. It is very old. It is very old." A thrill ran through my heart. Later, I reflected on what he had said. If, after such a long relationship, I was still where I stood, his patience with me must have been far greater than my capacity to grow. On another occasion, he asked, "What is your name?" I said, "Rajan." "What does Rajan mean?" I was quiet. He answered his own question and he said, "Rajan means king." And the next question, "Kahan ka Raja hai?" I again obviously had no answer. So he gently put his hand on my chest and he said, "Hriday ka Raja hai. Hriday bahut sundar." I've spent many years wondering what beauty he saw there. Even now I do. If there was any beauty there at all, it was because his love had put it there. For a long time, I carried a sense of inadequacy. I knew little of scriptures. I knew little of philosophy. I knew very, very little of rituals. I couldn't even sing bhajans properly. One day, while I sat at his feet, he asked me, "What is Upanishad?" Predictably, I had no answer. So he explained, Upanishad is made of 3 smaller words, Upa, Ni, and Shada. Upa means below, Ni means near, and Shad means to sit. So, Upanishad means what you learn when you sit near and below the Guru's feet. From that day onwards, I stopped worrying about what I did not know. What Swami poured into me while I sat at his feet, and at countless other occasions was all that I needed. Not information, not scholarship, not philosophy, only his love. My yearning with Swami never really diminished. To live with Swami never diminished. His response was always, "Vapas jao." Yet, some of his refusals also carried such sweetness of their own. Towards the end of another summer course in 1979, I once again pleaded with him to allow me to remain physically in his presence. He kept telling me to go back. In this hostel, in those days, in the courtyard, there were several rose bushes. I hope you still have them there. Every morning, I would pluck one bud and place it in a glass of water so that it would bloom later in the day. Each evening, after his discourse in the auditorium, Swami would alight from his car at the gate and walk past the hostel to his residence. I would wait for him near the hostel door, holding the rose. As he walked past, he would take the flower and say, "Vapas jao." "Nahi," I would reply. Swami would then take a few steps forward and toss that flower over his head, backwards. I would be waiting to catch it. Right there. And this little exchange went on for days, till I finally agreed to do what he had wanted me to. Many years later, at a public function in Delhi, I was asked to receive Swami at his car. In my hands was a small bouquet of roses. As soon as he stepped down from the car, he accepted the flowers, exchanged a few words with me, and moved on. After walking some distance, he clasped his hands behind his back, the bouquet dangling from them. The person walking behind him tried to take the flowers, but Swami gently moved away. I hurried after him, and the moment my fingers touched that bouquet, Swami let it go. To this day, those flowers remained pressed between the pages of a book. Some memories refuse to fade. Around the same time, another conversation was unfolding between Swami and me. This time, it was marriage. I had absolutely no interest in getting married. Swami, however, had other ideas. For years, whenever the subject arose, my answer was always the same: no. Swami would occasionally suggest a family. I would politely decline. Time passed. Nothing happened. Then one day, yet after another discussion, he looked at me and said, "I want it." There was very little left for me to say. With folded hands, I replied, "If you want it, do you have to ask me? Does that mean a yes?" I said yes. The matter was settled. A few months later, in the month of March in 1989, both families were called into the interview room. The young lady and I sat at his feet. Placing his hands upon our heads, he recited a few mantras and then announced, "Shadi ho gaya." The moment those words were spoken, I put my head in his lap and wept bitterly. When I finally looked up, his face was so close to mine And softly he whispered into my ears, "Life में कभी दूर नहीं करता हूँ." What a boon for a small yes. All the while I thought the conversation was about marriage. It never was. The question was not whether I would marry. The question was whether I trusted him enough to place my life in his hands. And from that day onwards, he kept his promise. Never once did he move away. The years that followed revealed the depth of that promise, not only in the great moments of life, but in the ordinary ones as well. In 1993, my mother passed away suddenly. We were all in shock. After completing the last rites, we rushed to Puttaparthi. During darshan, he came to me and asked, "Mother nahi aaya?" I said, "Swami, she's with you. If you know that, then why do you cry?" A little later, he called us into the interview room. Once inside, he asked, "Kya hua?" I began to recount the events, but he interrupted me. There was no pain. I was with her. That was all. No elaborate explanation. Just a simple assurance from the one who had been with her. Our hearts brimmed with gratitude. In time, my wife and I were blessed with 2 daughters. Both were born in Puttaparthi General Hospital. Swami showered them with immense love. Their naming ceremony, the first morsel of food, the first haircut, the first alphabet, the ear piercing, were all personally done by him. Years later, even the professions they would follow were chosen by him. The elder one was to pursue architecture, and the younger one, interior design. Under his direct care and guidance, both of them have grown up into beautiful human beings and fine professionals. As promised, he kept us close to his heart. He guided us not only in spiritual matters, but also in the practical details of daily life. At times, he would advise us about a car to buy. At other times, he would tell us how to choose a driver. Nothing was too small for his attention. Grace is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply knowing that through every joy, through every sorrow, and every uncertainty, someone is quietly looking after everything. For us, that someone is Swami. By then, his guidance had become a part of everyday life. One day, he turned an attention to my profession in a way I could never have imagined. In 1999, the Delhi Trust decided to build a boys' school in Rishikesh. Since I was an architect, they asked me to prepare a design. When I took the drawings to Swami for approval, he began speaking about something entirely different. The government of Karnataka had allotted land for what would become the super specialty hospital at Bangalore. Swami described his vision for what he wanted his hospital to look like. Then almost casually, he looked at me and said, "Shuru karo." My jaw must have dropped. I had never designed a hospital before. Seeing my reaction, he patted my cheek and said, "You can do it." Only much did I realize that that lesson had begun many years earlier, When I accepted my first job, I had believed that taking lower salary was a sign of detachment. Swami had corrected me. Now I understood why. He was not teaching me to think big of myself. He was teaching me never to undervalue what he himself had entrusted to me. If he had given a talent, it had to be respected. If he had assigned a responsibility, it had to be accepted. The confidence was always his. It was never mine. Over the following months, I worked on the preliminary designs and eventually traveled to Puttaparthi to show it to him. He called me to Purnachandra Auditorium, where he was living at that time. Looking through the drawings, he asked me to follow him. We walked into a large backstage area, and my heart stopped. Spread all across the floor were drawings and three-dimensional models made by some of the finest architects around the world. I looked around in disbelief. So many architects, I exclaimed. Swami turned around, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "But I chose you." His words took some time to sink in. Years have passed since that day, yet I have reflected on those words often. They were not merely about a hospital. They were not merely about architecture. They were not even about me. They were about the way Swami works. Again and again, he chooses ordinary people to do extraordinary things, not because they're the most qualified, not because they are the most capable, but because his grace fills the gap between what they are and what they are called to become. The hospital was completed in a single year. Even today, I find that astonishing. An ordinary project of that size would have normally taken many, many years. Was it speed or was it his will? Looking back, I realize that my contribution was extremely little. Swami, in fact, needs nobody. Yet, he chooses people in different capacities, giving himself the excuse to shower them with his immeasurable love. Perhaps that was the true meaning of his words, "I chose you." There were many occasions when Swami would say something in the course of a conversation that seemed entirely casual. Only after years would I realize what he had actually said. On one such occasion, he remarked, "मैं तुमको gate duty देता हूँ." Like many things Swami said, I understood it only years later. Time passed. In the year 2010, preparations were underway for Swami's visit to the Sri Sathya Sai International Center in Delhi. I had been assigned kitchen duty. My plan was simple: spend the day at the center and return home at night. But shortly after Swami arrived, concerns were raised about the security near the gate outside his room. Someone would have to remain there throughout the night. So I volunteered. The gate stood directly outside Swami's room. Throughout the day, I could see him. Occasionally, I could even exchange a few words with him. At night, I slept near the gate. Only then did I remember his words, spoken to me years and years earlier. "मैं तुमको gate duty देता हूँ." What seemed like a casual remark, years earlier, had found its quiet fulfillment. There was another conversation from those early years whose meaning also unfolded only much later. During Swami's visit to Delhi in 1977, I would repeatedly invite him to our house. Each time, he would look at me and ask, "Where is your home?" Thinking he was asking for my address, I would tell him very happily where I lived. Swami simply smiled and walked on. This happened several times until one day I suddenly realized that he had never been asking me where I lived. The next time he asked, "Where is your home?" I folded my hands and replied, "At your feet, Swami." He smiled. No further questions were asked. Only later did I begin to understand. Home is not where we live. Home is where we belong. For decades, Swami had been telling me, "Ghar banao." But Delhi real estate had other ideas. Whenever I felt that I had saved enough, the real estate prices would go up again. Years rolled on. Then in 2006, we found a plot of land just outside of Delhi. Finally, we could afford it. We rushed to Swami with the news. I had barely begun describing it when Swami said, "Thoda dur hai, magar अच्छा है. कुछ टाइम में flyovers, roads बनता है, फिर ठीक हो जाएगा." Then he began asking questions. How many bedrooms? How many other rooms? What dimensions? I replied that we were planning 3 bedrooms. Then quite confidently, I proceeded to give him the dimensions. Unfortunately, I gave him the dimensions from another project. So, after patiently listening to me, he said, "जो तुम बोलता है, वो गलत है. जो तुम बनाता है, वो सही है." A few days later, he called us again. Once more he asked, "कितना bedroom बनाता है?" 3, Swami. बराबर है. एक तुम्हारे लिए, कल को दोनों son in law आता है, दोनों के लिए एक-एक. Then after a brief pause, he asked, "Where is my bedroom?" For a moment, I could only look at him. "Swami, please use our bedroom whenever you come." His response was immediate. "I want my own bedroom. I want a complete suite on the first floor." Then he instructed us to begin construction within the next month. This was a major challenge. We had exhausted nearly all our savings in purchasing the land. Yet, once he had spoken, the construction began. Then something remarkable began to happen. Whenever a bill came due, the money would arrive from one client or another, again and again, exactly when it was needed. The house slowly took shape, and a few years later, it was complete. Only then did Swami allow us to move in. Today, the flyovers and the roads he spoke about have all come up, and the distance is not so much anymore. Many years earlier, when I had questioned him about why certain things happened as and when they did, he had replied, "Time. There is a right time for everything." Only much later did I begin to understand. For years I had thought to build. For years it had not happened. Then, when the time was right, everything began to move. Yet, the most remarkable part of the story was yet to come. The suite he had asked for occupies the first floor just above our bedroom. On many nights, I hear footsteps. I know that the Master has occupied his place. The Master has come home. There is so much more that happened and continues to happen between us. Those stories are best left for another day, another place. Dear Swami, I'm grateful that you entered my life. I'm even more grateful that you allowed me to enter yours. Students, Swami's greatest miracle is not that he touched millions of lives. It is that he touched each one as if that was the only one. His second greatest miracle is that no two stories are ever the same. And to you, Samarpan team, how I have always wanted to live this life over and over again. Thank you for giving me this remote button. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram. Firstly, let us all heartfully thank Sir for serving us this Sunday evening with this delicious spiritual feast. Sir has started his talk with the prayer of surrender and continued to explain us how Swami pulled his entire family to his fold. Sir has beautifully expressed how he experienced Swami's love in the summer course that he attended. And Sir also explained us how Swami nurtured him as a mother, how Swami guided him as a father, and how Swami taught him the lessons as a guru. Sir also mentioned that how Swami gifted himself to him by asking, "You want Swamiji? Milta hai." That is the greatest of gifts that anyone in this earth can give it to us. And Sir also mentioned how Swami guided him to maintain the equanimity during the situations of both success and failure. How humorously Swami used to reveal his omniscience, asking that, "Girlfriend ka kya naam hai?" to his friend. Swami has been taking care of his entire family, starting from his parents and to his children. Swami used to show anger, but it used to be backed by his infinite love. Isn't it? How beautifully Sir has narrated that Swami mentioned, "If I don't act with these boys like that, these boys would eat me like a papad." So that is whatever Swami says, does, it will be backed by his boundless love. Sir also narrated us how gently, how slowly Swami molded him into a beautiful instrument in his hand and has been using him in his divine mission. Sir, with hearts filled with love, we all once again thank you and convey our heartfelt gratitude from the bottom of our hearts. I now request our dearest Warden Sir and our beloved Sundareshan Sir to come forward and give away our token of love and gratitude to Sri Rajan Sood Sir. Thank you so much, sir. And before we conclude, I have a few pleasant announcements to make. After the Mangala Arati, all the devotees can proceed towards Trai Brindavan for Trai Parikrama, after which all the devotees can partake Swami's Prasadam. And I also now announce that we will be having our next Samarpan session on 16th of August. Thank you, Sai Ram. I now request our beloved speaker, Sri Rajan Sood Sir, to come forward and offer Mangalarti to Swami. Thank you, Sai Ram.
ओम जय जगदीश हरे स्वामी सत्य साई हरे भक्त जना संरक्षक भक्त जना संरक्षक पति महेश्वरा ओम जय जगदीश हरे शशिवदना श्रीकरा सर्वा प्राणपति स्वामी सर्वा प्राणपति आश्रित कल्पलतिका आश्रित कल्पलतिका आपद्बान्धवा ओम जय जगदीश हरे माता पिता गुरुदैवमु मरियन्तयु नीवे स्वामी मरियन्तयु नीवे नाद ब्रह्म जगन्नाथा नाद ब्रह्म जगन्नाथा नागेन्द्राशयना ओम जय जगदीश हरे ओंकार रूप ओजस्वियो साई महादेवा सत्य साई महादेवा मंगल आरती अंधको मंगल आरती अंधको मंदर गिरिधारी ओम जय जगदीश हरे नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा ओम शांति 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 समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्त लोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु ओम शांति 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 जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की जय।